presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, last night cleared the air about the status of the choice of his running mate. A former National Welfare Secretary of the APC, Kabiru Ibrahim Masari, whom he insisted was duly nominated but could choose to step down within a stipulated time and would not have breached any known laws, rules, or regulations. Tinubu, who maintained that Masari remained his choice as running mate and also denied sending his name as a placeholder, however, said consultations with President Muhammadu Buhari and other stakeholders of the ruling APC were still going on. This is as the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, yesterday fired warning shots at politicians, saying their new invention to sidestep its deadline was not only unknown to law, but alien to democratic practice. Dr. Abati, there's a lot to say about this morning.
Okay, well, what we have witnessed is that some of the presidential candidates were not ready with their running mates. The first party to announce its own running mate to Peter Umeade, Justice, was Apuga. After that, we've also seen the NNPP, the New Nigeria People's Party, announcing as running mate Ladipo Johnson, who was a gubernatorial aspirant in Lagos State. But most of the other remaining parties, 18 registered political parties by INEC, they did not take the option of announcing their running mates as of the deadline of 6 p.m. on Friday. What we had was a flurry of, announcement of, particularly at the level of the major parties, of surrogate running mates, of, proxy running mates, with even one of them, Dr. Odonyo Kupe, announcing that, look, he was just a placeholder, a space holder, just standing there. Yesterday, we had the Director of Voter Mobilization, Information and Education of the Independent National Electoral Commission on this same program. His name, Dr. Okoye, Festus Okoye. And Festus Okoye made it clear that, look, this idea of a placeholder is unknown to the relevant laws in Nigeria, either the Constitution or the Electoral Act. And that in any case, well, the only way this could work is if the proxy persons who have been put there, if they write a letter, of withdrawal and an affidavit to support it, to say that they are fake people, they are not the ones who are going to become running mates eventually. Then, of course, within the window of 30 days, already provided by INEC, there can be substitution. But I think the issues here are as follows. One, the Electoral Act 2022 is just still being tested. Many of the people who act under this law, they behave as if the Electoral Act 2010 is still in place. And because of that, there is confusion. There is misunderstanding. There is misapplication, misinterpretation of the law. And this will cost the political parties highly. And we have seen that at the level of the senatorial elections, with the crisis that we now have in Yobe North and also in Akwa Ibom. Akwa Ibom with regard to Akpabio. In Yobe North with regard to Senator Ahmad Lawan. That's at the senatorial level. In Yobe North, a gentleman called Machina says that he's not going to step down for anybody because he had no such agreement and that he was validly elected in the primary of the party for the senatorial process. So Ahmad Lawan's name, we're told, has been submitted to INEC. Festus Okoye could not confirm that yesterday, but what is in the public domain is that the name of a man who did not take part in the primary process was the one that was submitted, which will be a violation of Section 84, subsection 13 of the Electoral Act. So maybe the APC should be prepared for litigation in that regard. We have a similar situation in Akwa Ibom, where there is an issue between retired DIG Ekpodom and Akpabio. with a quorum saying that he was a product of a validly, processed primary process, okay? And that Akpabio is an interloper. But we are also told that it's Akpabio's, Godswill Akpabio's name that has been submitted. That's at the senatorial level. The bigger issue at the level of the presidential process is that these persons who have submitted the placeholders, within the purview of Section 31 and Section 33 of the Electoral Act. Now, if anybody is going to step down, right, that person must do so, as Festus Okoye told us yesterday, in writing, supported with an affidavit. The risk that these presidential candidates face is that, look, the man whose name has been submitted validly within the purview of the law, what if he refuses tomorrow and he says he's not stepping down? If he doesn't step down, then he becomes the validly chosen, running mate. I made a point yesterday that the principle established in AGF, that's AG Federation versus Atiku Abubakar, is that the position of a vice presidential candidate is not an appointive position. It's an elective position because the presidential candidate and his running mate, they run a joint ticket. And that is further affirmed in Section 142 of the 1999 Constitution. Section 141 says there shall be a vice president. Section 142 says that you must have a running mate before you can be considered a valid presidential candidate. So if any of these presidential candidates, running mates, if they play rogue, then those presidential candidates clearly and their parties are running a risk. The other point to be made is that, yes, we have been told that some of these presidential candidates who don't know who their running mates will be, at this moment, that maybe, they are nervous, they are trying to be careful and all of that. No, I think that argument is of no moment. Entirely of no moment. If you are running for president and you have been part of this process and you were present-minded enough to go and buy a form for either 100 million or 40 million, then you should have been able to think ahead with your strategies to know who your running mate will be. Is it at this last minute that people will be having hallucinations, inviting surrogates, placeholders, spaceholders, all kinds of characters that you do not trust in terms of their electoral value, political net worth, character, education? No, that one is not an issue. Anybody can be vice president or president of Nigeria. You only need to fail school SAT. You don't even need to pass secondary school education. Just go to school and show evidence that you have been around. You can be anything in Nigeria, which is one of the problems we have. So I think that what we face is that some of these presidential candidates may be disappointed at the end of the day because people are ambitious. Who does not want to ride a horse? And Machina and in Yobe North has already shown the example that it is possible that when they put you on a horse, you too can booga, you can raise your hand, you can shake your head. So the drama is unfolding. We'll see how it plays out.
I mean, the fact that they put you on a horse is an indication of your capacity to booga. Stealing your words this morning, and you said it aptly. I think we are at a precipice in this country. I don't want to be a doomsday sayer, but you know what is more shocking for me? That look at all the political sets that say they want to lead Nigeria. So most of them don't have a clear thought of who their vice presidential candidate is going to be. In all of this political process, they didn't iterate scenarios that they will have to present a vice presidential candidate. You see, we are joking in this country. That's why some people call back to a return of the former constitution, where we had a parliamentary system of government, where we had a shadow government already working, like it's done in the UK. There's already, for every incumbent government, there's a parallel shadow government that is shadowing that incumbent government and that is ready to take over from day one because they understand the temerity and the importance of issues around governance. But here, we can't hit the ground running. Look at it, it's obvious. Common vice presidential candidates, most of the presidential aspirants, forgive me for fallacy of AC generation, most of the presidential aspirants cannot bring forward. And they want to run Nigeria. And that's why we are not surprised that it took us some people 6 months to give us ministers. And the country was practically on hold for a while. So is that what we want to see? If people can't give us vice presidential aspirants, candidates, and they want to run the country? So how are we sure that if they're elected, they will not take another 1 year to look for ministers for us? Amidst all of this, the issues are not relenting. Look at today, there's fuel scarcity everywhere. This is the same product we subsidize. IPMA now is saying that they can't sell for anything less than 180 because the factors of production don't align, and we're still at 61, 65. And the subsidy is taking 0.4, 0.5% away from our GDP. We're wasting the money for a product we can't even account for. How many million liters of petrol do we consume per day? We don't know. Some are saying 100 million, but we've heard people that say we shouldn't consume more than 50 million. The candidates are not even talking about how can they even talk about the issues when they can't even present a vice presidential candidate, and they're looking for various lacunas in the law, and they've even brought in something alien to our law. These guys are magicians.
No, but I just want to add here that I fail to see the surprise here. Look how long it took for the ruling party to get its act together with regards to the National Convention. You also talked about the delay with the cabinet. We also talked about the fact that we established on this show how the two ruling parties were each waiting for the other to blink first, and then will now decide how they're going to act based on that. So for me, the idea of the indecisiveness, whatever you think about it, it's quite clear. And indecisiveness is the exact opposite of good leadership. Unfortunately, that has to be said. It shows a lack of preparedness, especially when you have a placeholder in, like the Labour Party, for example. If push comes to shove, the attack lion, Prince Joyo Okupe, can definitely not proceed with their presidential candidate, Peter Obi, because both of them are Southern Christians. So even that placeholder situation, with INEC saying that this is alien to the law, will the Labour Party inadvertently get stuck with a ticket that does not reflect our national diversity, that does not reflect ethnic or religious balancing? So it's actually quite a dangerous game that's been played here.
Well, the caveat, however, is that there's no law that says your running mate must come from a particular part of the country. It's a convention.
But it's an important convention.
Yeah, because of the way our
it's an
society
extremely,
is organized.
yes, if you want to win an election.
If Dr. Okukwe decides tomorrow that he will not step down, then, of course, he becomes the candidate.
Yes.
But the bigger risk is the situation we had in Bayelsa State, where the deputy governor to, I think, David Lyon.
David Lyon,
you know, what's his name again?
Eremenyo.
Eremenyo. You know, then was discovered to be defective in terms of his qualifications. And that cost, you know, the APC the ticket in Bayelsa State. It could happen. One presidential running mate can just say, I'm not stepping down. And if his party wins, and we discover that even the minimum of his school certificate failed, F9 parallel. With F9 parallel, you can be anything in this country, you know, at the political level.
It's just,
if you discover that, then if they win the election, then that's the end.
It's just
well, I'm making a specific point about diversity. Whether there's a law or not, we have established that convention.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's certain practicalities and realities in this country.
Yeah, but nothing says we can't have Muslim ticket. That we can have. In fact, you can pick a running mate from your village.
Okay.
That could be.
Decide.
This is the thing. If you want to win an election, that could be quite a mistake. A Muslim ticket or Christian ticket.
As Nigeria's energy crisis lingers, the latest victim is the aviation sector, as aviation fuel has now peaked at 815 naira per litre over the weekend. The jet fuel, which is imported into Nigeria, sells at varying prices across the country. Plane tickets now sell as high as 71,000 naira for one-way trip. Vice President of the Airline and President of Nigeria, Alan Oyema, had mentioned that 3 airlines are facing liquidation over the constant rise in the price of aviation fuel. The airline operators have called off their strike action last month owing to the assurances by the government to intervene. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tinubu Silva, explained this situation to Arise News, including how the government is finding solutions.
And that is why the series of
The actual issue is also the paucity of foreign exchange. People cannot have access foreign exchange to import this. For the time being, NNPC has been the main importer of this product. But what we are trying to do is to democratize the importation.
So this is not a supply issue?
It's not a supply issue at all. I mean, it's just a global problem. You know that the problem in Ukraine and Russia has actually exacerbated the rise in prices. It is not a Nigerian.
It has nothing to do with the high cost of diesel.
It is not at all. They are deregulated commodities. So actually, it is not within the purview of government to intervene in the pricing.
The recurrent fuel scarcity in Nigeria remains a paradox as it hits harder in Lagos, with more filling stations closing their gates to motorists on Monday. The few that sold petrol across the metropolis had long queues. Early signs of the commodity scarcity in Lagos surfaced Wednesday following weeks of scarcity in Abuja. The scarcity has led to traffic congestion and consequences are almost unbearable. The frequent fuel scarcity being witnessed in the country imposes unnecessary sufferings on Nigerians. The scarcity may worsen unless authorities take measures to close the demand-supply gap. Findings by our correspondents also revealed that most of the filling stations have closed their gates to motorists, took the decision to hold the commodity following speculations of a possible price rise.
There's need for us to have adequate supply of this fuel, bearing in mind that our refineries currently are not working. I don't know, the government should try as much as possible to invest more on our refinery and get them working. Since we have crude, there's no need for us to be suffering fuel like this.
I'm very, very surprised. I didn't think about this one. I was very surprised this early morning, seeing this kind of queue in petrol station. While we are the producer of the fuel. Why? I don't know. If you can tell me a reason.
So how do you feel about this case?
I feel bad now. I feel bad. I feel so bad. Because I'm supposed to be in office by now. But I'm seeing the queue. And I don't even know when I'm going to buy the fuel.
It's actually sad because, you see, it's actually going to affect so many things. I'm supposed to be at work by now. I'm in queue.
All right, the decision by some members of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMA, to shut down their operation is responsible for the lingering fuel crisis in Lagos and its environs. Mr. Akin Akinriade, Chairman, IPMA Lagos Satellite Depot Ejigbo, who confirmed the developments in newsmen in Lagos State, said that members took the decision because they could no longer operate at a loss.
why do we have this again? It's about the second time in this year. But this one is peculiar. Peculiar in the sense that for a particular reason, members of Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria have shut down their stations. Not because we are striking. We are not on strike. Rather, business environment has been very, very hostile to us, such that we can no longer do business under this condition. May I let you know, gentlemen, that our members are registered to load with PPMC. Ordinarily, we should be loading at the depot here. But since December last year, not a liter of petroleum has been listed here, even though we have tickets that we have paid for as far back as October last year. Satellite Depot Ejigbo, NNPC Satellite Depot Ejigbo. We have tickets that we have paid for amounting to more than 1 billion naira as far back as October last year. And those tickets have not been loaded up to now, meaning that PPMC is holding on to our money. The money that ordinarily we will have used to run our business. And you know, we are businessmen. We take back bank loans. And now we are paying for money that we are not using. But the problem we have at hand now, the immediate cause, is that since the satellite depot is not loading, we have the only option of going back to the private depots. These are the depots along Apapa, Abule Ado, and the Lekki Free Trade Zone. But in the last 2 weeks, they've been jacking up their ex-depot price, such that it has gotten to a level that we can no longer sell at 165 naira per litre as the government will want us to. As I'm talking to you now, today, there is none of these private depots that is selling below 162 naira per litre ex-depot. That means for you to load a litre of petrol, you pay in 162 naira per litre. You now have to add the cost of transportation, which is between 6 to 8 naira, depending on the distance.
Within Lagos or outside?
Within Lagos. If it's outside Lagos, it's much more than that. Right? So if you add 8 naira to 162, you already have 175. 170 rather. And this product is regulated by government, and government wants us to sell at 165. We have not even added the handling charges at the depot and the running cost at our stations. You know what this diesel says now, and you know how epileptic power supply is. We run on generator. For as much as you open your station, you are on generator, using diesel at 800 naira per litre. There's no station in Lagos or anywhere that uses less than 50 litres per day. Calculate that, put it on top. So our members can no longer sell at 165. In fact, there's no reasonable businessman in this business that can sell below 180 naira per litre.
We're now being joined by Arise correspondent Ozzy Okoli, who's on Awolowo Road, where the queues are not showing any signs of reduction. Ozzy, tell us what is happening on Awolowo Road, if you can hear us this morning. Yeah, great to have you, Ozzy. What's it like on Awolowo Road with the queues?
Okay, actually, I'm on Omo Osage Street off Awolowo Road presently, but definitely the filling station is on Awolowo Road. That's AP filling station. And as you can see from Omo Osage Street on my left, you can see the queue is very long and it keeps stretching deeper and deeper into the street. And what we have seen so far is that the AP filling station here, they've been selling fuel from around 5:30, 6 a.m. this morning, but they keep selling, but the queues are not reducing. And we have this situation causing a lot of traffic congestion around this place. So for now, I think they are selling, but definitely at a price of 165. You know, according to most of the press releases, that the landing cost is around 163 naira, but the AP filling station here is selling at 165. But they are selling, but yet the queue is not ending.
Well, Ozzy, well, you should be the man bugaing this morning. From being producer of the program, you are already on the streets. You are doing very well. But have you spoken to anybody, either the marketers or the filling station owners or the aggrieved persons? Is there somebody there that you can talk to give us a direct person-to-person impression of the agony that Nigerians are going through? Although I know that for the marketers, this is all about return on investment. If you can't get good return on investment, then it becomes really difficult for you to keep going. But this same year, Nigeria spent 4 trillion on fuel subsidy. What was that 4 trillion spent on? The World Bank tells us that by the end of the year, Nigeria will spend as much as 7 trillion naira on fuel subsidy. But ironically, strangely, we're not seeing the effect. But have you spoken to any of the major stakeholders on the ground around the space where you are now?
Okay, so here in AP filling station, we tried to get in contact with the manager, but immediately he saw us and saw Arise News. He was so surprised, and the next thing he said, no, we don't want to talk to anybody. And he said, no, calm down, just explain to us the situation. So he said, no, we cannot even enter. That's why we are not inside the filling station at the moment. But what we're about to do, what we intended to do then was just to let Nigerians know the situation of things. Not that we want to put them in a bad light. But somehow they are trying, because in some other filling stations around this area, they are selling for 180. But they are selling at 165. And some of the people that we met who were in their cars said, well, for now, that the queue is moving, but it takes a lot of time before it gets to them. So, and they are managing it well. We have some traffic operators here too. Last mile, we have policemen around too, controlling the traffic to ensure that there is decorum here for people to buy and then move away.
Right, Ozzy, thank you. A man of many talents, quite clearly. So how long do we expect AP to hold out on that 165 that they're selling for? Because according to IPMA, that's just unsustainable. They need to be selling for at least 180 naira per litre, given the costs of running their businesses, given the fact that they have bank loans to repay.
Probably is due to the fact that they had fuel from the onset. So for that reason, they will sell. But some people who are unable to get supplies, in fact, the little that they got, they have to increase the prices. But we'll definitely find out after this reportage to know if truly they will sustain this 165 naira that they've been selling, or they will increase it.
All right, Ozzy, tops up to you, my friend. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll have Rotus, we have Michael, we have Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. For a global business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. It's been a fairly quiet session as far as Asia is concerned. Chinese stocks up a bit. United States on holiday yesterday, so not a lot of action there. Bitcoin coming slightly back. Meanwhile, Australia, the headlines with them this morning, I think. I'll just give you a little bit about what's happening in Japan. The Nikkei's up 2.1. Hong Kong, Hang Seng, Tencent and Alibaba doing reasonably well, putting on a few gains there. Shanghai Composite marginally up this morning, but again, not a lot of movement. I think probably a lot of people are looking at the Reserve Bank of Australia Governor Philip Lowe. Now, he thinks that inflation in Australia will peak about 7%. Now, it's quite below what's happening in a lot of countries. But what he's importantly for everybody in the world, what he's saying is that monetary policy tightening globally will bring down inflation at some stage by creating a balance between the demand and supply of goods. That's what he's saying right now. As far as the US is concerned, again, on holiday yesterday, but futures up quite a lot. Dow Jones Industrial up 433 points this morning. Again, we'll see how that actually lasts. If you remember, it was what we were describing as a sort of rather brutal week last week as far as the markets were concerned. The S&P dropped 5.8% last week, down more than 23% off from its record high in January. The blue chip Dow Jones down 4.8% last week. So a bit of a rebound, but again, I think we better be very careful and see how this lasts. Former US ambassador, who is what's his name, David Alderman, is saying that if they lift tariffs on some of the Chinese goods, that will improve the inflation outlook in the United States. That's very much, remember, before Biden's midterm elections, whether or not that actually happens or not. However, the US is continuing and increasing its ban on imports from China's Xinjiang area. Now, if you remember, this is the area which includes the Uyghur community, and a lot of people have been saying that it's basically slave labor there. China has repeatedly rejected those kind of suggestions, and the Uyghurs in internment camps in that particular area are not slaves, but this is continuing a ban as far as the United States is concerned. Let's turn our attention to the EU. Here's quite an important one. We've been talking long and hard, have we not, about gas imports from Russia actually drying up or being throttled. We hear this morning that Germany is going to be actually going back to coal for its energy, and in the light of that, Germany will seek to, it's trying to compensate what's happening as far as the Russian throttling of gas supplies are concerned. However, the EU has Ursula von der Leyen as one, has been actually saying that there should be no backsliding into coal, and we should keep our focus on renewables. That's what the EU is saying. The question really investors are still asking themselves after last week's big meeting, emergency meeting of the EU, is can the ECB save the euro crisis? Now, those with longish memories will remember that because of the deflationary effects of 2012 and so on, the ECB embarked on this kind of printing money program and lower interest rates and so on. Of course, inflation has been a game changer as far as that's concerned. And again, many people looking towards the ECB, they're saying there are no limits. Well, you and I know that there are limits. Of course, there are limits. There are limits on everything. But at the moment, they're still continuing with that. So they are still actually debating. And this is what investors are puzzled about. They're not quite sure which way the EU is going to go as far as that's concerned. Let me bring you to the United Kingdom. Sterling, this is according to Goldman Sachs, now don't exactly know what their position as far as their reserves are concerned on sterling is. But anyway, what they're saying is that the Bank of England is wrestling with this growth stroke inflation pressure, and it feels as though that the sterling will actually weaken a little further, and, you know, because of all the problems. And so the Monetary Policy Committee was saying that inflation will be 11% by the end of the year. Some of us think it'll be slightly higher than that. As far as the UK is concerned, the rail strikes are bringing the country to almost a complete halt. The mystery is they're hitting some of the sectors. These are still workers. Labour Party talks about protecting the workers, but these are workers in leisure, theatre and tourism. These are some of the people who are trying to scrape a living together, and they're being hurt by this just as the country is coming out of the pandemic. And here's a cost of living thing. Now, here's Rolls-Royce. This is Rolls-Royce Engineering, not the cars. Rolls-Royce Engineering, the people that make for example, the engines that power your planes when you fly. And they're giving staff £2,000 one-off payment to help with the cost of living. This is following on from other companies actually doing similar kind of things, wondering if this is going to be part of the package. And finally, oil prices slightly back from the big slump on Friday. I've got Brent at about 112 overnight, up to about 114 actually, finally closing, and WTI up to about 111.50. That is the global view this morning.
All right, Michael, real quickly, a lot of people are saying this is the 80s all over again because, yeah, the miners' strike happened in 84, Top Gun was released in 86, voila, the RMT union having the strike in 2023, Top Gun just came out, and the sticking point is about 7%. They want 7%, they have every right for it. Grant Shaft and the government is saying we can't pay that amount. Why? Because normally the $5 billion that is part of the budget for Transport for London is mostly realized from ticket sales, and they're not getting that ticket traction. And apart from that, there are many other problems with the government. Who will bulge first? And it looks as though the barristers too have picked up the strike. I was seeing a story yesterday about the barristers union also going on strike. What is happening to the UK? Is it falling apart like a pack of cards? 11% inflation. Tell me what that'll do to the economy of the UK that is struggling as we speak today. How will that push up poverty? It's not a good time for the UK.
It'll all continue to struggle. The train strike is continuing. It'll probably get worse. It may well go to other sectors as well. What the government doesn't want to do is to push that benchmark up to 7% because it knows that if it does that as far as the railways are concerned, then it will actually give a benchmark for other industries which get public money to actually go for those kind of wage settlements. So it doesn't want to do that. I mean, I was listening to both sides earlier this morning. They're not sitting down. They do need to sit down. The government is very anxious to say that just because the government is not in the room, it does not, or not actually at the table, it doesn't mean to say it's not taking an active interest in what's going on. It's not like the 80s. If it were like the 80s, the miners, if you remember, they went on strike and they were basically almost put out of business because they were actually striking on an industry which was being overtaken. And there were huge rifts as far as, if you remember, it was the UDM, and the NUM, those were two of the major unions, big rifts in those. Those enmities still continue today. Not like the 80s at all. This is something which needs actually settling right now. I return to my point, this myth that the Labour government is talking about workers. We are all workers. We want to go to work. As I was saying to you earlier on, it's like people who work in the hotel industry, people who work in the music industry, people who work in services, people who work in restaurants. They all want to go to work. They are workers, and I think that this is where the union is actually falling down, because one way or the other, the railways will not be the same after this.
Well, maybe Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his government are both facing their biggest test, even beyond the party gate, with the Prime Minister saying, "Oh, the government will apply a strike breaker option, pass legislation quickly through Parliament." To allow businesses to employ staff, agency staff, and all of that. But we'll see, as I say again and again, how Boris Johnson survives this. The number yesterday was 40,000. Now it's 50,000. It looks like something is growing in this summer of discontent that Britain faces. But I was going to ask you, Russia is now the biggest oil supplier to China. China embracing the subsidies offered by, Russia, and apparently with China's support. China saying that, look, we are friends for all times, in good and bad times. It looks like this compromises, the effort of the West to humiliate Russia. It looks like these sanctions, the way things are going, will never work at the end of the day if Russia continues to get the kind of support it gets from China. What are the implications of this in terms of geopolitics? And then second, The Economist put up a story saying that, look, we've been talking about inflation affecting various countries, tightening monetary policy and all of that, but there are some countries that are not affected, particularly in East Asia and South Asia. What do you think accounts for these, with countries like Vietnam, Macau, out of the 14 countries listed by The Economist, having like 1% inflation rate, 2% or lower inflation rate? What accounts for this difference?
Well, I think as far as the countries which don't have high inflation at the moment, I don't know the detail of all those particular countries that you mentioned, but I would guess that what they do is they don't import a lot of food and they don't import a lot of fuel, because all those prices are rising, as we say. That has to be the solution to it. If they're self-dependent, that's absolutely fine. But they shouldn't forget, none of these countries should forget, that still we've been talking about supply chains choking. Is it not therefore sensible to say to these countries, don't forget globalization, don't forget the markets that you still actually need, and if we have to cope with inflation, it'll be something that will catch on to you. It will become a worldwide phenomenon. There's no question about that. The Economist may be right for the moment. That those are the only kind of reasons that actually I can think of. Your first question was about Russia and China. It could be that as far as we know, and we do not know the truth of this, it may be that China is very happy to disregard sanctions. Why should it not? It can do if it wishes, and it's also buying a lot of cheap Russian oil. I mean, that seems to be what's going on. But remember, at that video summit that I mentioned yesterday, you did not get, although the translation from RT, the Russian television station, was very different from actually what the Mandarin translation was, and it was pretty clear that there was no voicing of support from the one to the other. Russia and China was merely saying it was taking advantage of cheaper oil because it can. Now, if China wants to join the high table, which it clearly does, and if it encourages itself within the WTO, which it does, then I suggest it probably will be thinking twice about this. But for the moment, that's actually happening. I think it's far too early to say as to whether the actual sanctions on Russia are actually working at the moment. It is isolated in everybody's eyes at the moment, is it not?
It is. I want to go back to the Tory government's fraught relationship with the unions, and just a comment really that the Labour government might not necessarily have done better if there was a Sir Keir Starmer in power now, because the Summer of Discontent is obviously a reference to Winter of Discontent, not Richard II, Shakespeare's play, but under James Callaghan, that was a Labour government. So in spite of all that beer and butties camaraderie that we're all told existed at the time, they actually ran him and his administration out of Downing Street. That was a Labour government. So I don't think it's necessarily just hostility towards the Tory government, per se. What do you think of that?
You're asking me to comment politically? All right, then. What I think about it is I was around during the Winter of Discontent, and it was a horrible place to be. And actually, Dennis Healey, who was James Callaghan's finance minister, was turned round at the airport because we were going to be saved by Arab money. That was the situation back in 1973-74. There was rubbish on the streets, there were rats on the streets, and so on. And it actually, finally, you're absolutely right. It lost them because they were kowtowing to the unions. I feel as though, but that's the Labour government then. That, with the wisdom of hindsight, we look at what it was doing then. There wasn't an enormous amount of support for the Conservative Party at the time. The majority of newspapers, I remember very well, were siding with the Labour government and its feeling for the unions. That is not happening now. We live in a very, very different world. So I suppose, in a sense, you're right.
Oh, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Wilson. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, well, I mean, you've covered this pretty extensively, the whole issue of the Independent Petroleum Marketers of Nigeria saying that 180 naira per litre is the least at which they can sell fuel. So, I'm not sure much to add to that, but look, as far as Nigeria is concerned, a decision has to be made as to what to do about, fuel subsidies. Zainab Ahmed, I think it should be recalled, Minister of Finance, this was about, a week ago?
5 days ago.
Yeah, 5 days ago. She said that our debt issues will be, excavated by this fuel subsidy issue, in that the amount of money that we're paying for subsidies is going to impact our ability to pay our debts. Debt service to revenue is already in the high double digits, anywhere from 75 to 80%. So in a scenario where that happens, where you default and you end up like, Argentina was in the 90s, or Sri Lanka now, you can think of a fallout from the ratings agencies, whereby they would just essentially downgrade you to absolute junk status if you were to default. And then, what was our last Eurobond price? I think it was 8% or so. You would be essentially borrowing at 25 or 30, right? So the Moody's and the Fitch and the S&Ps of this world would essentially downgrade you. And so we really have to come to terms with the alarm bells that are being rung with respect to the impact of this fuel subsidy that we're paying. And then another thing that needs to be asked is, I'm not sure if this was touched on earlier, but is 180 naira per litre an accurate price? If you use diesel, where diesel is right now, petrol follows it because that's deregulated. That should give you a clue. So with where diesel prices are, almost crossing 800 naira, that should give you an idea. So I'm not really sure. I mean, even the estimates based on landing costs and so on and so forth, what? I mean, take your pick, anywhere from 235 to 300 or so. So I'm not really sure what kind of margins IPMA is going to be making with 180 naira. But then there's also the fact that can they get away with this? You're not the regulator. So, the press conference, the statement they put out is acknowledged. But I believe that the regulator is going to have something to say about this. You can't just, hop in and say, you go and sell at the 180 per litre without, adherence to what the regulator has said. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's a price cap, and the price cap is 165. Of course, it doesn't make economic sense in terms of profitability for the marketers because of the FX issues and so on and so forth. But I expect the regulator to step in at some point if that's the case. But, we have to see how this goes. To South Africa, the more kind of similar issues. ESCOM says that there's going to be 3 weeks of blackouts. They're cutting off, I think, 2,000 megawatts in terms of output between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. for the next 3 weeks. You know the issues. You know the story with ESCOM. So, as far as the capacity is concerned, coal-fired plants and so on and so forth, it's going to be tough times for the next 3 weeks. And it's between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. for South Africans. And then to Kenya, the Mombasa port, there's been some issues with shipping lines, and the Kenya Port Authority and the Kenya Rail Lines. Essentially, payments haven't been made, and there's a dispute that has delayed cargo coming in. And if you think about what Michael Wilson was just talking about, all the supply chain issues that are impacting the globe, the last thing you need is any kind of hiccup with respect to the ports that will delay goods coming in. But they'll sort it out. But anyway, look, away from all the negativity, I want us to just soak up Mombasa as a tourism destination. 1.2 million people around that, responsible for the bulk of tourism revenue that comes into Kenya. It faces the Indian Ocean. Beachfront property. It's pretty beautiful. So just take a deep breath, soak it in. Africa is beautiful, and we need to, maximize
that's a good one.
I think I'm gonna start doing this. Maybe
that's a good one.
Because
that's a good one.
the news it'll bog you down.
I know, and it's a great.
Feel free to only talk about Mombasa.
And it's a great place. I should say.
Indeed.
And apart from that, another thing about Mombasa, it's a melting pot of culture.
Yeah.
You've got Arab culture, you've got Indian culture, you've got great food, great cuisine, great place. Moving on
to the negative news.
But Nigeria is not Mombasa,
right?
And why? Because we have problems, and we talk about problems when we have them. One of the problems on ground, we've not been able to build a refinery over the years. Now that crude oil prices have gone up, we can't cash in on it because of crude oil theft and the like. We have serious FX issues. All of this culminated together into what we're seeing. We had a golden chance to pull out this subsidy in 2012. But guess what? Nigerians themselves went on the streets and called President Goodluck Jonathan the devil. And they protested in Ojota. And they said, keep it on, keep it on, keep it on, keep it on. This incumbent government protested. And they said, oh, subsidy is a scam. But all of a sudden, from the word subsidy, it turned into under-recovery. From under-recovery now, it's taking 0.4% of our GDP.
That's correct.
It's also putting us in a dire debt situation. And we keep looking at the problem and we keep kicking the can down the road. We had another golden chance to pull it out earlier this year. What did they say? They said, oh, no, you can't pull it out. It's election year around the corner, blah, 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 and we don't pull it out. We have not done anything to build refineries. Can you imagine that in over 20 years as we return to democracy, we can't even build one refinery? So what have successive government done? They've just shamelessly lied to Nigerians. And look at it, we didn't even sign PIA to give ourselves a fighting chance. Because maybe if we sign PIA, then IOCs will be able to invest.
That's the Petroleum Industry Act for our viewers. Yeah.
And they'll be able to build refineries. Because the first refinery built in this country, we forget that it's an oil company called BP, British Petroleum, that built the refinery in 1965. So we've been paying workers in Kaduna Refinery for doing nothing. We've been paying workers in Kaduna Refinery for doing nothing. And we've gone on like that. Just to add in for good measure, we've been paying people in the Jakarta for being moribund over this while. For good measure. So we've wasted our resources. NNPC is at a loss almost every time. The books are bonkers, goodness me. All of this looks like a scene from Chucky Hopscotch, but it's not child's play.
But you know
Well
what?
done.
This is the thing. When you say, as you often do, about manifestos and how you're going to rip them to shreds, I don't even think that they're barely worth the paper that they're printed on, because people say whatever they want to say. Yeah. The incoming administration is going to talk about subsidy, get there and decide that political realities or exigencies take priority and just completely jettison those promises. That's what happens.
That's true.
Okay, Rotus, I'm sure you brought up South Africa for, a specific reason, that ESCOM is load shedding. ESCOM in South Africa has been shedding load since 2007.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
But at the same time, it should give no comfort to Nigerians that ESCOM is shedding load. So it's not only in Nigeria that we have power cuts.
Blackouts.
We can't compare, apples and oranges. The ESCOM in South Africa has a much more diversified, much more innovative, energy generation system. The problem they're talking about now is about generation. They say they have supply constraints within the supply chain, within the value chain. And as a result of that, they cannot release up to over 14,000 megawatts of electricity. So for the next few weeks, while they are trying to fix that, South Africans will do with, we just have to make do with just about 5,000 megawatts, right? Yeah. Which is even still higher
than what we have
than what we have in Nigeria, where we have a country of over 200 million people. Yeah. What is the population of South Africa?
50 million, 55.
So, I mean, people should not stretch the imagination to the end of the street and assume that, it also happens in South Africa. Yeah. No, it's not the same thing. They have a better organized system there, despite the fact that countries have their problems. Okay, as for energy crisis in Nigeria, fuel now, we're told the marketers are saying the only way they can make profit is to sell at 180 naira per liter. Abi? Yep. You are saying that realistically, in fact, if you look at all the costs, it should even be over 200 naira per liter. Yeah. Okay. So what happened to the 4 trillion naira that we have been told have been used to subsidize fuel this year? So the World Bank will seem to be vindicated, telling us before now that Nigeria will spend up to about 7 trillion naira to subsidize fuel. This will also be a fillip to the original argument that fuel subsidy, however, is unsustainable. Yep. And then it's the tragedy of the Nigerian state, writ large, to the extent that the other day I told you, ExxonMobil and British Petroleum, they were jubilating that they are making a lot of money from refining because of the situation in Ukraine and Russia. And that this is the best time for refineries to work. Nigerian refineries are comatose due to poor governance and bad leadership and corruption. So why are we then sitting down and saying, why is this happening? Of course, this will happen. Look at the aviation sector in Nigeria. Yep. Government said they will make available about, 100,000 liters of jet fuel. Now, as of today, jet fuel is being sold at 818 naira per liter. Yep. We read a story the other day that up to 70 airlines cumulatively have shut down in Nigeria. The Airline Operators Association of Nigeria, they are saying that 3 major airlines will shut down. You can't travel by air. You can't go by train because kidnappers and terrorists are waiting. You can't go onto the roads. I almost got trapped in a fuel crisis. I walked this morning.
I've been walking since yesterday. Wow. Yeah, I just parked my car. It's outside.
There is no Okada. There is no motorcycle that used to rescue me.
There's no Okadas.
So, I mean...
So you either take a little stroll or be burnt alive. Which is better?
And this is election season.
Yes, it is.
But the big irony about Nigeria is that all of this may have no impact whatsoever.
It will have no impact
on the choice Nigeria that the people make. The people will collect money, they will vote with their stomachs, and they will not bother about their power to choose wisely. Even the presidential candidates, how many of them have manifestos? You try to review about 2. You have not brought another one to this table since then, because there are no manifestos anymore. Everybody says we will deal with security. We will deal with economy. We will create jobs.
One he reviewed.
He said that it wasn't his manifesto. That is not real.
They told us they are planning to create a manifesto. How many weeks does it take for intelligent people to sit down together and write something about this Nigerian situation? So, well, Rogers, thank you for bringing this
thank you, Doctor.
Reality. Nice try, Rogers. You tried to distract us with a picture of the beaches, but it's just too grim.